all good sessions involve preparation. So some weeks ago, the speakers today, the panelists, we assembled on Zoom to prepare and get to know each other a bit better as to which aspect of the topic about getting published. We have found in QUIP events, even in person in friends' houses, recently as a few weeks ago at Britain Yearly meeting, when Jennifer Kavanagh, who's with us today, and I staffed a table. One of the recent frequently asked questions is, please help me get published. How do I get published? It's getting harder and harder. So that was the sort of inspiration for today's panel, to ask different people what their response to how easy or hard or the changing trends in a digital world of getting published today. By published, we mean largely books and pamphlets, short form, rather than necessarily journal articles, but that's not irrelevant either. So our first speaker is from Berkeley Press in Oregon, Eric Muir. And rather lovely experience a few weeks ago. He joined us with his young son, and it was decided that I would interview him on Zoom because he cannot make today due to diary clash. At the end of the recording about what Berkeley Press are looking for and what he thinks sells, works today, we switched off the recording, and then he was in the most beautiful room with lots of light. And he said, oh, yes, we're in a new office. It's in the basement of a church. And then he gave me an impromptu tour of the office, which included, printing and even assembling pamphlets. And I suddenly said, gosh, I'm sure people on the 16th of May would actually love to see what a small publishing Quaker office, basically not in his home anymore, in a rented space. But we switched on the camera a second time, and he gave us a quick tour of Berkeley Press. So I'm hoping Sarah, tech host, thank you, Sarah Hubner, and that the first video we're going to play you is Eric's tour of the office. And then there'll be a pause, and we'll go to the second video.
So I will go ahead and turn my camera around. Berkeley Press has a small office in Newburgh, Oregon, but we recently opened a larger office here in Gresham, which is just a few miles from my house, and in order to support our printing. So our paper supplies there, and then we've got our two photo quality Giclée quality printers, and then our laminator and die cutter station right here. And then we have a coil binder at our Newburgh office. We have a wire binder here, and then a saddle stitch saddle stapler. Our paper cutter, I have a second one that's out of commission right now. So this is the main paper cutter right here. And then this is the older of our two digital presses. It's not actually hooked up right now. More paper, of course. And then this is, oh, the light is not so great. I'm going to try from a slightly different angle so you can see this a little better. This is our newer digital press, and then the two computer engines that run it. And these presses have allowed us to save about $10,000 on printing costs over the last year. And then with the work that we do for Quaker Religious Thought, it saved them about $200 over this last year. And it's made my job a lot more fun because now I'm not just sitting behind a computer all the time.
Thank you. So Sarah, will you show us video 2 now, which is Eric talking about Berkeley Press and what they're looking for. Over to you, Eric.
Berkeley Press publishes 50 to 60 new titles each year under 7 imprints, including 2 quarterlies and 3 additional periodicals. One, Quaker Religious Thought, we do in cooperation with QTDG, the Quaker Theological Discussion Group, and then Raleigh Review and The Fool's World, a travel magazine and a poetry / flash fiction magazine that we're doing in cooperation with a non-Quaker publisher based in North Carolina here in the United States. On top of that, I receive anywhere from 100 to 150 new manuscripts every month, and everything gets read. One of the things that I've noticed that about Quaker writers in particular, or writers coming from the Quaker tradition, whether or not their book is focused on a Quaker topic or Quaker content, is that many of them think that because Berkeley Press is the primary Quaker publisher here in the US, that it is my job to make whatever it is that they've sent me into a book. And in other words, a lot of people treat me like I'm hired help rather than somebody who is a professional who knows something about the industry and who can help them if their book looks like something that I'd like to have be part of our catalog, something that I'd be proud of. So a couple things that I notice right away when I get an inquiry from a Quaker. Usually it's just an email, and an email is great. We read everything. Usually it's a very friendly email. But a lot of times people send me a question uh, related to their content rather than sending me the manuscript itself. So I want to see the manuscript, and I want to have at least a month in order to look at the manuscript. Shorter is better. Because 85% of the US print industry uses print on demand, books can be printed one at a time, which is super convenient for book sales, but it also makes the book more expensive to produce. So once that we get above 60,000 words, we're looking at a book that here in the US is going to cost $30 or more. And I am dealing with a lot of Quakers who are writing in a somewhat academic tone while trying to make their book accessible to a popular audience, without necessarily giving up their Quaker ideals, but recognizing that Quakers can't be the primary or total audience in order for the book to actually work. I mean, when I say a book needs to work, I am not talking about thousands of copies. I am talking about 400 copies sold over the next 10 years. So I'm looking for a book that is going to have some lasting, not necessarily timelessness, but lasting value over the next 10 years and maybe longer. I'm looking for a book that speaks directly to Quakers while being accessible for non-Quakers. And I'm looking for a book that has themes that say something important to our culture, to our politics, to our praxis as Quakers, but that is going to say it in such a way that it's going to speak something of value to people who are not Quakers. Barclay Press sells books. We have our own bookstore. We also sell books online. We also service other Quaker booksellers, FGC, FWCC, and a lot of yearly meetings. And that means that we have some market power as far as helping to get your book out to whatever audience it needs to get to, but we're still very small. We don't have a single full-time person on staff, and we don't own a building. For years, we haven't had a press, and we don't have somebody who does marketing. And what that means is that we really depend on the authors to do a lot of the legwork, figuring out where they might be able to get a review, trying to pitch shorter pieces that come from the full manuscript. In other words, I am not going to make somebody rich and famous if they bring me a book, no matter how good it is. It's more of a collaboration slash partnership that we do together. I'm not sure what else would be helpful for me to say, but those are the things that come to me off the top of my head.
Thank you, Eric. I hope you all enjoyed seeing both Eric's office and hearing his pitch for what Barclay Press are doing. Certainly, as a non-American Quaker, I found it fascinating. I didn't know as much about Barclay Press until I heard Eric speak. So now we move to another North American friend, Audrey Greenhow, who's with us in person, who's the manager of FGC, Friends General Conference Quaker Books, and their online bookstore. I'll hand you the floor, Audrey. Thank you.
Thank you. I would echo a lot of what Eric had said about if we're going to publish something, what would we look for? What would we agree to publish? We publish far less than Barclay Press does, way less. But I'm going to focus on distribution, things to consider when you're deciding whether to publish or not. First of all, think about whether you actually want to produce a book or pamphlet, or for what you are seeking to do, is a blog better? Sometimes people want to share something where feedback's needed, or there's a certain immediacy to the communication between the author and who's receiving the online publication, because certain things really do won't do well as a printed material. Think about who your audience is going to be. Sometimes people approach us wanting to publish something that's very geographically local, could be a history of their meeting or something Quaker in their area, and they're not expecting it to sell beyond that community. And, well, then maybe you go to a local printer, see what they can do, and print a smaller number of copies. Now, sorry, I'm blanking out here. Something else to consider. A lot of people self-publish now. Anybody can get published. The question is, are they willing or able to self-publish? And things to consider there are, there are different services. I think everybody knows that Amazon has something for self-publishing. Ingram has something for self-publishing. Ingram is the printer of most materials in the US. Even the Amazon publications are printed by Ingram. So Ingram's self-publishing arm is called Lightning Source. Oh, sorry, Ingram Spark. An author will do better in some respects on one of those sites versus another. I mean, when it comes to the actual publishing. So you want to do your homework and see who will give you what services, who will give you the most financial benefit if that's a concern. There are friends who publish who have no interest, or I should say minimal interest in the financial return. They really want to get their message out. And so they're looking at a different place from someone who's depending on the income. If you are hoping your books sell internationally, you want a printer or a service that will print in different parts of the world. So that if the book is only printed in the US, but you're hoping to sell in Europe, I'll give you a current example. We're about to publish Rex Ambler's next book. We expect a heck of a lot of the sales to be in Britain. So we publish through Ingram and they have a press there. So our books will actually print there. We don't have to ship. If you self-publish, you need to think about whether you want to personally be responsible for distribution. Are you expecting or willing to have people contact you directly to then ship their books to you? Some people are able to do that, some not so much. I can tell you a problem I have as the manager of QuakerBooks.org is that when people self-publish through Amazon, they're not very kind to other retailers. So we don't get a bookseller discount. It means if we order from them, we have to up the price of the book, or we can order directly from the authors, for example, Nancy and David Haynes. So they send us our books directly, which is great. But for some other entities, it doesn't work so well. This is the shipping. The distribution and shipping has become much more of an issue than it used to be because of shipping costs having gone up enormously in the last few years. So it really is an issue. I don't know that I have anything else right now. I know when we did the practice run through, I was responding to questions much more. So I will stop there. I will just say that Quaker Press of FGC is still active, and QuakerBooks.org is, obviously a live online bookstore, and we will have a big pop-up store at the Gathering. I hope to see many of you at the Gathering in Burlington, Vermont this summer. Registration is open now.
Thank you.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. Always lovely to hear from you. And yes, there is a bit of a red flag around Amazon in my experience as well, Anyway, thank you. So we're staying on the theme then of self-publishing, which Audrey has spoken to, and we're going to turn now to an author's perspective on self-publishing. And we have both Nancy Haynes and David Haynes, who have experience of writing and publishing themselves over the years. And I will hand the floor to them now. Nancy and David, thank you.
Hi. David and I have self-published 7 books between us. I didn't start out this way. For my first book, A History About the Beginning of the American Friends Service Committee, I sent out many query letters hoping to find a publisher. And when I realized that it would not be published in time for the 100th anniversary celebration, I decided to self-publish. And we have gone that way since for all of our books. The benefits of self-publishing for the author include higher royalties. Traditional publishers typically pay between 7 and 15% of the list price, while self-publishing, especially if you sell directly, you can keep 60 to 70% of the retail. You have total creative control on everything, including the cover design, the interior layout, book title, and pricing. Traditional publishing can sometimes take several years until a book is on the shelf. With self-publishing, you can upload your files and have your book available for sale worldwide almost immediately. And there's no need to invest the time and energy to send query letters to find agents or publishers. You retain all rights to your work. And traditional publishers can let a book go out of print. And I'm still selling my children's book about Meeting for Business 11 years out. And since they're print on demand, I don't have to carry large inventories of my books. On the other hand, you're responsible for all expenses, especially if you don't want your book to look amateur, including professional editing, cover design, formatting, and marketing. This can cost anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand dollars. Until David learned how to format and upload our books, I hired someone to do all this and paid the money up front. You're also responsible for marketing your book without a publisher to help you. And while it's easy to get your book online, many bookstores are hesitant to stock self-published books. So you have to take that into consideration when you're considering who your audience. If you decide to self-publish, several platforms help with formatting and printing or making an ebook. David and I use KDP, which is an Amazon site and very easy to use. David's sister published her book with Ingram Spark, and my writing group friends often use Draft to Digital. There are other good platforms that authors use, among them Lulu and BookBaby, and there are several in the UK that are available. Turning it over to David.
You can self-publish and hire an editor, an indexer, a formatter, a cover designer. But even if you do that, you've got to recognize that you are still responsible for the vision and making sure that the final book matches your goals. If you choose to do this work yourself, there are plenty of tools available to help you, but you must learn to use them. It's not something that you say, well, I don't know how to do it. I'm going to decide it's not important. All of the steps become important. You need to start by finding a book design that you like. Once you find that design, you need to check things like the font size, the margin sizes, the gutter width, the design and placement of the running titles, things that you don't really notice when you pick up a book, but if they're done poorly, they are glaringly obvious. Microsoft Word has all of the tools needed to write, edit, and format your book. Well, you will need to learn how to use them, and probably you will need to learn how to use them every time you do a new book, because Microsoft Word tends to change the way things are done. You should recognize that the process will likely take several iterations, because much of the editing and formatting is sequential. so that if you do something and think you're done and then you change a margin or you change wording, it's likely that you're going to undo much of the formatting that you've already done. Editing after formatting, for instance, can significantly disturb your formatting, even fixing widows and orphans. One of the last steps of preparation can affect previous formatting decisions. Indexing. There are many components to indexing, things that you wouldn't think about. Capitalization will give a different index than lowercase words, so that you need to go through and manually fix all these things. There are ways to choose a word and have it indexed, but it will only index if that word is consistent, if it's always capitalized or not capitalized. If you're going to index names, you need to manually go through and reverse the order of the name so that the index is by the surname. Sometimes you want to index based on words that don't even show up in your text. So you need to go through and find the place and choose a word and hit it for index, but change the indexing on it. Microsoft Word will do all this, but you are in charge. You are making the decisions. You need to make sure that you know what you're doing. Cover design can be done by any number of image generating programs. KDP, which is the Amazon self-publishing site, will give you a template for the cover based on book size, number of pages, type of paper, and usage of images. So all of these decisions have to be made carefully. I have found for generating the cover, I found it easiest to use PowerPoint to generate the covers. I recreate the KDP template on a correctly sized PowerPoint slide. And then I paste the images and the text where I want them so that I can see what it actually looks like. The template markings can be brought forward or sent to the back as you need, so that you can constantly check and make sure you are fitting the template. Once you get the cover design done, you then need to save it to a high resolution image format. KDP uses PDF. This is essential. Often you can print a PowerPoint slide to PDF, but the resolution tends to be very low. I produced a couple images that then I print them out even on my own computer, look at them, and they're fuzzy. And that just does not do. So you have to find a way to generate a high resolution PDF, and there are multiple ways of doing that. You will need to learn how to do these things. And as I say, you may need to relearn how to do them every time you publish a book, because the processes may change, or you may forget the details. So do not expect to spend a day and be done with the final editing and formatting and production. And one last thing, even if you have controlled everything that you're doing, you always order a proof copy and look at it carefully before you decide to call your book finished and hit the publish button. I know you're desperate to hit that publish button, but do not hit that button until you're sure that you're done.
Thank you so much, Nancy and David. Clearly a labor of love, lovely to hear you talk through your experiences. So we're going to cross the Atlantic Ocean now and come to London to a very experienced author, Jennifer Kavanagh, who's written in several genres and even has had a history herself of working in publishing and as a literary agent. So Jennifer's going to speak to us today largely from the perspective of herself as an author and getting published today. The floor is yours, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been asked to talk specifically about Quaker Quicks because that is something that crosses the Atlantic. And I'll start with that, and then I'll talk about specific publisher more broadly than Quaker Quicks, and then I'll mention some other publishers who publish in this genre. Just to say a bit about my background, I worked for nearly 30 years in publishing, including at Penguin, and was a literary agent for 18 years, 14 with my own business. And I started writing just over 20 years ago. And my first book was published by Quaker Books in the UK at a time when they hoped to broaden their appeal beyond Quakers, but they didn't really have the facilities to do that. And that is the only book of mine that is out of print. Okay, so in 2017, I heard this remarkable phrase, "I think we could do with more Quaker books." That's not a phrase you hear very often, particularly not from the CEO of a commercial publisher. The publisher was John Hunt, founder of the eponymous publishing house that publishes in English all around the world. John followed this up by saying that he felt that Quakers have a voice that needs to be heard, particularly at the moment. They had published a very successful series called Pagan Portals, and they wondered whether they could do the same for Quakers, and asked what I thought. And I said, yes, wonderful, let's do it. And so small books, about 20,000 words, about different aspects of Quaker way, both for Quakers and for those who might not know much but would like to know more. In his follow-up email, John wrote that the series wouldn't make his fortune, but basically just think it would be something worth doing. I need reasons to justify my place on the planet, which was rather nice. So that was in 2017. I then wrote to a couple of dozen Quaker writers who had a track record and could establish the market with some successful titles. We threw around some ideas for a series name, much harder with an initial Q, and came up with Quaker Quicks. Within a year, 7 books had been signed up, 6 from the UK and 1 from the States. And the first title in the series, John Lampon's Quaker Roots and Branches, was published. A few years later, John Hunt retired and the publishers were taken over, and it's now called Collective Inc., I-N-K, a sort of pun, really. So now in 2026, Quaker Quicks are very established and selling well with a good series look. I'll just show you 2 books, one mine, one, don't you see those? One by an American author, Pamela Haynes. Yes, so 26 titles have been published, with more authors coming from the States and from other countries too. But I think the series has slowed down. There was a concern that we were publishing too many at one point, but I think there aren't any in production at the moment. I have a feeling that the new outfit is slightly less pro-Quaker than John himself was. I keep a watching brief for possible duplication of topic, but it's down to the publishers to decide what to accept. I don't read people's manuscripts, but I'm happy to talk about the idea. We feel this series has given heart to Quaker writing and hope it will be an ongoing series for many years to come. There are definitely some topics that have not been covered: sustainability, equality, the arts. I've certainly suggested to some writers that they might want to contribute. If you would like to write something for the series, do have a look at existing titles. Go to collectiveincbooks.com and search for Quaker Quicks. The thing to know about Collective Inc. and John Hunt as it was is that everything is done online. You don't have an editor, you don't email, you don't phone, everything is done online. And it is the one way that they can publish an awful lot that others can't because they keep their overheads down. Their editors are all over the world. One that's in France, some are in the States, some in the UK. So to submit a manuscript, you do what John Hunt called the boring exercise of entering a proposal on the imprint Christian Alternative author inquiry website, search for submissions, putting in Christian alternatives and mentioning Quaker Quicks, of course. We do get used to the online thing. There are a lot of positives to this publisher. I've been published with them for nearly 20 years, 13 books they've published of mine. They have good royalties. They don't pay advances, but these days, most commercial publishers don't. Few do, unless you're, a big name. But good royalties. You get sales figures every month, which is completely unheard of in most of the commercial world. You share any queries you have online with all the other writers, so you can see the answers. You can see it's a bit like an author cooperative in that sense. People review each other's books too, which is nice sometimes. What else is there to say about them? Yeah, their decision-making process is incredibly fast. What they do is you send in a proposal or a small part of the book. They, whatever they ask for, they, within a couple of weeks usually, send you 3 reports, which can be enormously helpful. And on the basis of those reports, they decide on whether to offer a contract or not. There are 3 levels of contract, one of which means you have to contribute a bit. I've only ever given into that once. So 3 levels of contract. So if they offer you a contract, and then they ask you to send the whole thing or whatever, but it's done so fast, within a few weeks, unlike most publishers who take months if they ever bother to reply. It's important to say Collective Ink, they have about, I don't know how many imprints they have now, 14, something like that covers the whole gamut. They do fiction. They do memoirs up to a point. They did do mine, but with slight reservations, I think. Mind, body, and spirit, all branches thereof, paganism, all sorts of things. So Quaker Quicks is a small part of what they do. They don't publish very large books. On the whole, they don't do illustrations. Certainly within Quaker Quicks, no illustrations. But as I said, I have been published with them for a long time. None of the books are out of print. They can publish just one at a time, as we've heard from others. And I could give you a list of other publishers in the UK, but that might not, they might not be open to American stuff in the way that Collective Ink is. So I'll leave that for now, but I can send a list of possibilities to people if they'd like it.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I've always admired the branding of Quaker Quicks and their lovely white covers, and they stand out in Friends House Bookshop in London, all together on a stand. So they certainly succeeded there. However, as an editor who had an inside publishing house job for 30 years, I prided myself on face-to-face relations with authors. I just can't buy into dealing with a machine. It's a personal business, isn't it, getting your book published? Anyway, thank you, Jennifer. We covered that very beautifully. So now we keep going across the world and we come to Moscow, and Sergei Grushko, the publisher there, is going to speak to us about the experience of translation, getting books from other languages and what they're looking for and general trends in translation in his experience today. Over to you, Sergei.
Hello. It is easier for us to be translators, for somebody else to be an author, because it's just a technical thing to translate. But of course, you have to choose what to translate. We have some borders here. I mean, our political situation doesn't allow us to write everything we want. So we have to be very careful. And in some sense it helps in some sense, but we have some books we translated before about, for example, about LGBT people, and now we cannot sell them, we cannot distribute them, we cannot put them online, so it's very dangerous. But you know, I want to say this, to tell you not only about translations, but also about people who want to write. Some of them call themselves Quakers, some of them don't, but they ask, should I write things which could be interesting for your audience? I mean, for people who are interested in Quakerism. And my answer is, you please write if you feel that you are not able not to write. So if it's like it's like at the meeting for worship, if you are led to speak, you can speak. If you are not led, if you feel it is just your own words, don't speak. So my answer, my advice to them is, if you are not able to, if you are not able not to write, write. You can begin with the short stories, with short articles, write and self-publish, send to us. We will publish your stories, and you will receive the you will see what the readers will answer. Feedback, you will receive the feedback. Oh, fiction or non-fiction? Of course, non-fiction in some sense is easier, but if you write fiction, the chance that you will get more readers increases. Even if your style is not professional, even if your works are short, for some reasons you will, if you are a beginner, you will get more readers. So I encourage people to write, even if they are not sure. Forms, short forms, long forms, there's no difference actually. If your idea, if your super idea you want to express, it can be expressed by a short form, write short stories. If you feel you have to write a lot of words, use a longer form. It depends on you. It absolutely only on you. And of course, feedback is very important. And self-publishing is absolutely important too, because you will receive, you can be published easier in this way, and you definitely receive the feedback from the audience. I will not recommend you special platforms for publishing, because, you know, in Russia is something different. It is not an English-speaking word. My colleagues spoke a lot about it, but there was a question, translation rights. I would like to say some words about translation rights. When you sometimes we want to translate books written by English-speaking writers, and we ask agents to give us permission. Their usual way of communication is ignoring us. It is almost impossible to receive rights for translation books from big companies and from their agents, which they have in Russia. So maybe you can write in your papers something you can sell, you can distribute our books where never in English-speaking world, but we would communicate with possible translators on our own. Thank you very much. That's all. Thank you,
Sergey. Yes, in my career as an academic publisher, I saw the decline of translations in that it is quite a lot of work for a publisher to get a translation contract. And in my experience, it wasn't as profitable sometimes. So a sad sign of our times. Thank you very much, Sergey. So now we're going to turn to the world of pamphlets. And obviously, we're going to cross back across the world now to a pre-recording with the editor and author herself, Pendle Hill Pamphlets, Janaki Spickert-Keeler, who's prevented today. Although I noticed one of our colleagues is here, so that would be helpful if we have questions. So Sarah, I'd like you to play video 3, please. Thank you. So QUIP friends, we're now joined by Janaki from Pendle Hill Pamphlets, who's an editor and author of Pendle Hill Pamphlets. And we've asked her to contribute to her perspectives on getting published in Pendle Hill Pamphlets and any other observations you may have. Go ahead.
Thanks, Anola. So I've been the editor and pamphlets coordinator at Pendle Hill for almost 9 years now and worked on about 50 pamphlets. And so we publish manuscripts between 7,000 and 9,000 words. And we very rarely request manuscripts. It's almost entirely by submission. So you're welcome to submit at any time. If you go on our website under Learn and Publications and Bookstore, there's it has our submission guidelines as well as our style guide. I think one of the nice things that we provide to our authors is that we're one of the few publishers that still copy edits things. We do not pay for manuscripts, unfortunately. We're not able to do that. Let's see, what else? We everything is professionally designed. So here's a recent pamphlet by our own Jennifer Kavanaugh. We put out 6 pamphlets per year. They're all between 32 and 40 pages. They're designed to be to be read in one sitting. I think something that people should know as they're submitting their essays is that they come to me first. I will read them through, and often I will ask an author to make certain changes that I think that our publication committee would appreciate. And then our publication committee meets 3 times per year. They consider the manuscripts. They'll say yes, they'll say no, or they'll say, please ask the author to make these specific changes. And in that third case, I do give authors, upon request, the comments of the publication committee, with the warning that they were not written with the author in mind, so they're rather blunt and can be hard to take in. We also make e-publications of all of our books. We put those up in the Kindle and Nook stores. Those are the 2 that seem to be the most stable and accessible worldwide. And we do a lot of our small run reprints through Amazon KDP, which has been it's a pretty easy interface to use. Of course, you are giving money to Amazon, and so we're looking into some other alternatives at the same time. But it has worldwide access. People can access our e-publications and the pamphlets that we have put up in hard copy. They're worldwide, which is really nice. And we have just gotten into audiobooks. We're also publishing those through Audible, and that's been exciting. What else do you want to know?
Yeah, I just wonder, are there any topics, trends, what kind of things have sold best, or might you look for?
I think things on that are like live topics in the Religious Society of Friends tend to sell well. So things on vocal ministry, that's like how to do vocal ministry well. We're about to come out with a pamphlet on how meetings can nurture vocal ministry. Race and racism, those are popular. And I people often ask me, I have this idea, should I write it? And I think if it's a genuine leading, then yes, you should write it. And I've read a number of really wonderful manuscripts. We can't publish all of our manuscripts that are wonderful. Some of them are just not in a publishable form. But the authors always say that the writing of them has changed them in some ways, so I think that that's worth it all on its own. I can't hear you, Finola.
Sorry, it's all about the ministry of the written word, isn't it? So long live Pendle Hill pamphlets, Janaki. Thank you.
Yes. We're coming up on pamphlet number 500 in August. We're going to have an online celebration, so you are all welcome. It's free.
Oh, and how long does that go back to? When did they start? Sort of.
We started in 1934. So yeah, we didn't always publish 6 per year. For a very long time, it was just kind of as they came. And it took until maybe the 50s for them to really standardize into short, meant to be read in one sitting.
That's quite a tradition. And I like the idea of it reading in one sitting because, yeah, it's kind of alive and it's ministry that you absorb it. Yeah. Thank you. Bless you. And many thanks again. I'll stop recording.
Okay. Thank you.
So another successful brand or experience I've had in my career was that books in series often sold better than books not in series. So we've heard about Quaker Quicks and we've heard about Pendle Hill pamphlets. So now, friends, we have about 10 minutes for questions. And I think probably if you have a question, raise your hand. And it's probably makes sense that you can't ask questions of Eric Muir or Janaki, although Pendle Hill pamphlets colleague is here. So of course you can. So Sarah, you have a question, Sarah Hubner.
First, I have a comment, which is if you're working on a book on your computer, print it, because we had our interim faith and practice published several years ago, and I think people who reviewed it just looked online, and when it was actually published, it was like 8-point sans serif type in dark gray. So the following year, we had to republish it in larger typeface that worked for people. My question was, if you self-publish, how do you go about distributing the book?
I'd like to take that, Nancy. Can you say something? Or Audrey?
Well, we've self-published and we distribute through Amazon, through Ingram, and through our website. And we do a lot of direct contacting any place we can find who might be interested in carrying it. And we do a lot of the kind of marketing that you need to do, even if you have a publisher, which is talk to book groups, line up lectures, visit meetings. You know, you have to do a lot of work to sell Quaker books.
Audrey, go ahead. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay,
Audrey,
just to add, when you self-publish, there are different options. You're given the opportunity to have the book appear. At least this is how Ingram works, the online catalog, and so retailers will see that. Amazon prints through Ingram, so like Amazon books are listed in Ingram's online catalog. You just have to see what the options are for distribution, for publication, and you pay an extra fee.
thank you, Audrey.
And I would
The
like
next person.
and
Oh,
I would
sorry,
like
go
to
ahead.
add that it would be very useful to have your own blog to promote your books. Blog is very important thing for promotion.
Thank you for that reminder, Sergey. So Shula Smith, I think you're the next person I see. Thank you. Go ahead.
Shula Myth, but that was close.
Sorry.
I have a question about agents. Is it possible these days to find an agent without a book that's already sold lots of copies? And how would you even find somebody? I mean, I have a couple of books out. Is that, I mean, what do you do, and how do you find someone reputable who's not going to scam you?
So I'm going to ask Jennifer to take that question, and I know you have a question yourself.
Yeah, there's a book, and I think it's online, called Writers and Artists Yearbook. And there you go. And that lists agents as well as publishers, and it lists the kind of things that they're looking for and what they want. I'm always being asked about agents. Most of my friends have retired or died off. And it's almost as hard to get an agent as it is to get a publisher, but it's true that if you do get an agent, you're much more likely to get a publisher.
So they take cold inquiries I mean, you can just cold call an agent?
No.
So you need an agent to get an agent? I mean,
No, not cold call. I mean, you look at what what they need for a submission and do it. Yeah.
Jennifer, as you're on screen, what is your own question?
Okay, one comment that I should have made and one question. The comment I should have made is that in the UK, there is no Quaker publisher. Britain Yearly Meeting only publishes stuff from its own committees at the moment, although I'm working on trying to persuade them otherwise. Quacks does exist, but it is a self-publishing organization. But I promised to mention this. The Friend is actually keen to publish books, but they would have to be right for The Friend. They would have to be, not too long and not too local. I mean, the same issue as for anyone else. But I said I would mention it if Joe didn't manage to come on. And my question is to Sergey. I understand that Friends House Moscow would like to publish my memoir, but they can't get the money because of the position in Russia. Is funding a fundamental barrier at the moment?
Technically, it is possible to get money from abroad. It is not a key problem.
Okay, so we're moving on as we're running out of time. Susan Clarkson here in Britain. Go ahead, Susan.
Thanks very much, Finola. I'm a reader. I'm asking this as a reader, a severely visually impaired reader. And I do have quite a few Pendle Hill pamphlets on Kindle and also Quaker Quicks. But I have to use my Kindle app. I can't use a Kindle because I have to make the print big. What I wanted to ask is, I want to say thank you for putting things on Kindle and also on Audible. But what I wanted to ask is, I want to buy on Kindle Stuart Master's latest book, Tangled Roots, which was a Swarthmore lecture. And I see that it's available on Amazon as a book, but not as Kindle. Who makes the decision about if a book is going to be put on Kindle and when? Possibly Jennifer might have the answer to this.
It's the publisher who has the relationship with the different outputs, as we would say. So it may be that it is yet to come. I mean, it only published in the last 2 weeks, that particular one. I was actually at the lecture. I think you could take it up with the author, or we can pass on the question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, because I can't read hard copies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have another question that I'm not going to ask now. I'm hoping it's a very tiny question. I'll ask it later on.
Okay. I think we should move to Meg, who I know has been waiting for a while. Meg, thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Thank you all. I want to throw a pitch for Libro FM really quickly, and it gets to my question. But that was one of my local, I've been working with an independent local booksellers for my books. And they were going to Libro because of the issues with, what is the other one that is Amazon related? Audiobooks is Amazon related. Everything's Amazon related. And that gets to my question, friends, is for stubborn friends like myself who do not want to go to Amazon and do not want our books available through that support, or if others are interested in having that conversation about supporting authors who really want to be cooperative and are socially sensitive, as we are ecologically sensitive, what is who to work with, and that's why I'm grateful to Eric and Barclay Press for running the chapbook press now in-house and printing in-house and distributing his own. And that's why I was able and willing to work with him. So on the self-publishing arm, investing thousands, as was mentioned, in self-publishing a book that is done to integrity. And I guess I also want to offer that I'm not judging here. I'm simply moving with what I would be led to say in Meeting for Worship, as was offered for those who are writing, that there is such a crisis globally, socially and ecologically. So I'd love thoughts on that and to further that conversation. I realize we're close to time.
Thank you, Meg. So very quickly, Nancy and David, I think I saw your hand. Or is there an error?
On the ebooks, on the Kindle ebooks, the decision is made when a book is submitted to KDP for publication. Making it an ebook is not simply pushing a button. The more complex the structure of your book, the harder it is to get it to ebooks. What I have done in a couple cases, when the potential reader contacted me, I created a PDF of the book, sent it to them, and then they can blow it up on their home computer. So there are ways around the formal ebook structure, but the decision is made by the publisher or by the author for self-publishing at the time of publication.
Yeah, thank you. I think we better draw to a close there. Susan, I can email you if you have another question. Thank you all so very much. And I realize there's some useful comments in the chat, which we'll try and save. But we have used up our hour. I've really enjoyed this, friends. Thank you so much. I think we've all learned from each other. It's exactly the sort of thing QUIP needs to be doing. dialogue.